Two men founded the church at Rome. One was a fisherman who denied he had ever met Christ 3 times to a servant girl, swearing he didn't know the man. The other was a religious enforcer who hunted Christians from house to house and stood guard over the coats of the men who stoned the first martyr to death, a coward and a killer. And on the 29th of June, the church does not bury that. She celebrates them together, not in spite of what they were, but because of what God made them. Their names were Peter and Paul. And the church you will kneel in this Sunday stands on the 2 of them, the way a building stands on 2 pillars. Start with the fisherman. Simon was from Bethsaida, on the Sea of Galilee. Rough trade, rough hands, a working man's temper. In the Gospels he is loud, the first to speak, and very often the first to be wrong. He tried to walk on the water and sank. He swore he would die before he denied his Lord, and then in the courtyard of the high priest, the night it mattered most, he denied him 3 times before the cock crowed. The Gospels do not hide it, all 4 of them tell it. Now the other one, Saul of Tarsus, was nothing like Simon, a Roman citizen by birth, a Pharisee trained at the feet of the great Rabbi Gamaliel, brilliant, disciplined, on fire with zeal for the law. And he turned every ounce of that fire against the followers of Jesus. The Acts of the Apostles tells us he was there at the stoning of Saint Stephen, the first Christian martyr, consenting to his death. He went from house to house, dragging out men and women and throwing them in prison. He was, by his own later admission, a persecutor of the Church of God. So look at what heaven had to work with. A man too weak to admit he knew Christ, and a man strong enough to murder for the opposite cause. Neither was a safe bet. Remember that. The whole lesson is hidden in it. Here is how God works with men like that. He does not throw them away. He rebuilds them on the exact spot where they broke. To Simon, Christ gave a new name. You are Peter, he said, rock, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. The keys, the authority to bind and to loose. To the impulsive fisherman who would deny him, and after the resurrection on the shore of that same sea, Christ rebuilt the wound directly. 3 times Peter had denied him. 3 times now the risen Lord asks, Simon, do you love me? 3 times Peter says yes. 3 times Christ answers, feed my sheep. He healed the 3-fold denial with a 3-fold commission. He built the office of shepherd on the very stones the man had shattered. Then the road to Damascus. Saul is traveling there with arrest warrants in hand, hunting more Christians, and a light knocks him flat. A voice, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Not why do you persecute my followers? Why do you persecute me? Christ counts every blow against his church as a blow against his own body. Saul rises blind, is led into the city by the hand, and is baptized by a Christian named Ananias, one of the very people he had come to destroy. The killer becomes Paul, the apostle to the Gentiles. The man who held the coats at a martyrdom will write a third of the New Testament and die a martyr himself. The church does not honor these 2 on the same day by accident. She is telling you something. Peter and Paul were not the same kind of man, and they did not always agree. Paul tells us himself in his letter to the Galatians that he once opposed Peter to his face at Antioch because Peter, out of human respect, had pulled back from eating with Gentile converts and was setting a bad example. Mark this carefully, brothers, because the world loves to misread it. Paul corrected Peter's conduct, his behavior in a moment of weakness, not his office and not the faith. Peter's authority was never in question. What you are watching is fraternal correction inside the church, one pillar steadying the other. Even the first pope was a man who could falter in his prudence while the office Christ gave him stood unshaken. That is the point of 2 pillars instead of 1. Peter is the rock, stability, authority, the keys, the unbroken line of shepherds. Paul is the road, zeal, the mission, the relentless drive outward to the nations. The church needs both. Authority without zeal goes cold. Zeal without authority goes mad. Christ bound them together so neither could run loose. And the keys he gave Peter did not die with Peter. He laid his hands on others, and they on others, in an unbroken line, bishops succeeding the apostles down to the man in Rome today. The Catechism calls it Apostolic succession. It is not a theory. It is a chain of hands, generation by generation, back to a fisherman on a shoreline in Galilee. Both men went to the heart of the empire that hated them. Both died there. Under the Emperor Nero, in the persecution that followed the Great Fire of Rome sometime around the years 64 to 67, they were put to death. By ancient tradition, Peter was crucified and asked to be hung head downward because he counted himself unworthy to die in the same posture as his Lord. Paul, a Roman citizen, was spared the cross and beheaded by the sword on the road outside the city. They buried the fisherman on the Vatican Hill. They buried the apostle on the Ostian Way. And if you go to Rome today, you will find a basilica standing over each grave, St. Peter's over one, St. Paul outside the walls over the other, the blood of the two pillars soaked into the soil of the capital of the world's most powerful empire. Here is what should stop your breath. That empire is gone. The Caesars are dust and museum marble. And the church those two broken men planted in Roman ground is on every continent on earth. 2,000 years later, this morning, offering the same sacrifice, the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Christ said it to Peter's face. History has been proving it ever since. So what do a fisherman and a persecutor dead 2,000 years have to do with you? This: you are not too far gone. That is not a slogan. It is the entire architecture of the feast. God did not build his church on flawless men. He built it on a coward who repented and a killer who repented. He builds on repentant men, or he builds on no one, because there is no other kind. Whatever you have done, the denial, the years away, the thing you are sure puts you past saving. Peter denied Christ and got the keys. Paul killed Christians and got the mission. The wound is not the disqualification. The wound is where Christ rebuilds. 3 disciplines this week. 1. Stop disqualifying yourself. Name the failure you've been using as an excuse to stay down. Take it to confession. Then get back in the fight. Christ rebuilt Peter on the exact site of the denial. He will do the same with yours. 2. Submit to the rock. You are not your own magisterium. Obedience to the legitimate authority of the church is not weakness. It is the discipline that keeps a man's zeal from going mad. Find the teaching you've been quietly resisting and bend the knee to it. 3. Take the road. Paul could not keep the gift to himself, and neither can you. Pick one person this week, a son, a brother, a friend who's drifted, and say one true word about Christ out loud. The mission is not for clergy. It was handed to laymen on a Roman road. This is what the Sanctum is for. Men who were not too good to begin with and who got back up anyway. Altar, arms, allegiance, subscribe. And next Tuesday, the next video is in your feed. St. John the Baptist, the last of the prophets. And if you want the weekly Sanctum dispatch, one reflection, one discipline, one action for the week, the link is in the description. Saints Peter and Paul, pillars of the church, pray for us. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Fight well, brothers.